students, welcome to e-education Let's Crack NIOS. We are doing chapter 8, a case of suspicion from the English textbook for senior secondary. A country's doctor sets out to help a patient in middle of a windy night. Whom does he meet on the way and what does he learn? Let's read and find out. Objective of this lesson, you will be able to read and understand a suspense story in English. Use phrasal verbs. Change direct speech to indirect speech. Give and understand direction in speech. And write a paragraph reporting experiences. We'll start with section 1. He threw back the covers and sat up on his bed, his feet feeling along the cold floor for his house slippers. The telephone ringing insistently a little distance away. He turned on the light and walked to the phone and took down the receiver. "This is Dr. Benson," he said. The November wind was bringing sounds of winter as it blew around the little white house. The doctor got into his clothes. He went to the table and stared a moment at his watch, his spirit complaining at the job ahead of him. 2 o'clock. His mind also complained at the horrible hour, and he wondered why children had to be born at such improper times. He took up 2 small handbags, the short pill bag, as the people of the town knew it, and the long obstetrical case, the baby bag they called it. Dr. Benson stopped a moment to light and then put the pack of cigarettes in his overcoat pocket. The wind felt like a surgeon's knife at his face as he opened the door and ran, bending low around the driveway to the garage. His car started with difficulty, coughed half a dozen times as he drove down the driveway, but then began to run more smoothly as he turned down Grass Street and onto the deserted highway. Miss Orthrowley, who Dr. Benson was on his way to visit, already had almost a dozen children. But it seemed to the doctor that never once had she had a baby in good weather nor in daylight. And while Dr. Benson was a country doctor, he was still a young man and couldn't find the pleasure that his father, the old Doc Benson, had found in seeing aught. The father, always 2 or 3 babies behind in payment of his baby bills. Section 2. How do you think the story proceeds? Will it be about Mrs. or Mr. Sorley? Or will there be a chance meeting with someone else? Read ahead to find out. It was a long ride to the Sorley farm, and the sight of a man walking alone along the country road, as seen just ahead by the lights of the car, was a welcome relief to the doctor. He slowed down and looked at the man walking along with difficulty against the wind, a little package under his arm. Coming alongside, Dr. Benson stopped and invited the man to ride. The man got in. "Are you going far?" asked the doctor. "I am going all the way to Detroit," said the man, a rather thin man with small black eyes filled with tears from the wind. "Could you give me a cigarette?" Dr. Benson unbuttoned his coat, then remembered the cigarette in the outer pocket of his overcoat. He took out the packet and gave it to the rider, who then looked in his own pocket for a match. When the cigarette was lighted, the man held the packet a moment, then asked, "Do you mind, mister, if I take another cigarette for later?" The rider shook the packet to remove another cigarette without waiting for the doctor to answer. Dr. Benson felt a hand touch his pocket. I'll put them back in your pocket, the little fellow said. Dr. Benson put his hands down quickly to receive the cigarette and was little irritated to find them already in his pocket. A few minutes later, Dr. Benson said, "So, you're going to Detroit?" "I am going out to look for work in one of the automobile plants." "Are you a mechanic?" asked the doctor. "More or less. I've been driving trucks since the war ended, but I lost my job about a month ago." "Were you in the army during the war?" "Yes, I was in the ambulance section, right up at the front. Drove an ambulance for 4 years." "Is that so?" said Dr. Benson. "I'm a doctor myself. Dr. Benson is my name." "I thought this car smelled like pills," the man laughed. Then he added more seriously, "My name is Evans." Ivan. They rode along silently for a few minutes, and the rider moved himself in his seat and placed his package on the floor. As the man leaned over, Dr. Benson caught his first good look at the small, cat like face. The doctor also noticed the deep scar on the man's cheek, bright and red, looking as though it were of recent origin. He thought of Mrs. Ott sorely and reached for his watch. His finger went deep into his pocket before he realized that his watch was not there. Section 3. Did the doctor like Ivan's small cat like face and bright fresh scar? Would you have thought well of Evans? What do you think will happen next? Dr. Benson moved his hands very slowly and very carefully below the seat until he felt the leather holster in which he always carried with him his automatic pistol. He drew out the pistol slowly and held it in the darkness at his side. Dr. Benson stopped the car quickly and pushed the nose of his gun into Evan's side. The rider jumped with fear and put his hands up quickly. "My God, mister," he whispered, "I thought you." Dr. Benson pushed the pistol still deeper into the man's side and repeated coldly, "Put that watch in my pocket before I let this gun go off." Evans put his hand in his own vest pocket and later, with trembling hands, tried to put the watch into the doctor's pocket. With his free hand, Dr. Benson pushed the watch down into his pocket. He opened the door and forced the man out of the car. "I'm out here tonight probably to save a woman's life, but I took time out to try to help you," he said to the man angrily. Dr. Benson started the car quickly and the wind closed the door with a loud noise. He put the pistol back into the leather holster under the seat and hurried on. The drive up the mountain to Sorley Farm was less difficult than he had feared, and Odd Sorley had sent out one of his older boys down the road with a lantern to help him across the old wooden bridge that led up to the little farmhouse. Mrs. Sorley's many previous experiences with bringing children into the world apparently helped her greatly because she delivered this child with little difficulty, and there was no need on Dr. Benson's part for the instruments in the long bag. After it was all over, however, Dr. Benson took a cigarette and sat down to smoke. Section 4. Was the doctor right in turning Evans out in the cold? Do you think he will ever know whether he was right or wrong? Was the case of suspicion justified? "A fellow I picked up in my car on my way here up tonight tried to rob me," he said to Ott. Feeling a little proud, he took my watch, but when I pushed my .045 pistol into his side, he decided to give me Give it to me back. Odd smiled wide at such an exciting story coming from young Dr. Benson. Well, I'm glad he gave it back to you, Odd said, because if he hadn't, we wouldn't have any idea what time the child was born. What time would you say it happened, Doc? Dr. Benson took the watch from his pocket. The baby was delivered about 30 minutes ago, and right now it's. He walked over to the lamp on the table. He stared strangely at the watch in his hand. The crystal was cracked, the top was broken. He turned the watch over and held it closer to the lamp. He studied the worn inscription there. To Private T. Evans, ambulance section, whose personal bravery preserved our lives the night of November 3rd, 1943, near the Italian fort. Nurse Nesbitt, Jones, and Wingate. This was written by E. Wallace. So now we come on to vocabulary enrichment. Fill in the blanks using the correct form of the phrasal verbs given in the box. So now over here we'll be using the words in the box and deciding which word comes in which sentence. So we have put back, put on, put up, put out, put off, and put by. So we will number this now over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So every wise person dash a little money for a rainy day. Every wise person put by a little money for a rainy day. So that is 6. Please dash the fire after you have cooked the rice. Please put out the fire. So 4. The meeting was dash as the chairman was not well. The meeting was put off as the chairman was not well. Please dash the dictionary on top shelf after you have looked up the meaning of the word. Please put back the dictionary. That is 1. Dash your cardigan as it is cold. Put on your cardigan as it is cold. So put on will be 2. So now the team dash a great performance. The team put up a great performance. That is 3. Now we have reference skill. Consult your dictionary and complete this idiomatic expressions. Use the correct form in the sentences below. Have a finger in every dash. Put our heads dash. So we'll move on to grammar now. Reported speech, reporting of statement, and question. Rules for changing direct speech into indirect speech. We make a number of changes when we change from direct speech to indirect speech. Remove the inverted commas. Remove the comma separating the reporting verb from the actual word spoken. Study the kind of utterance reported and introduce an appropriate reporting word. Please remember these rules are important. Remove the inverted commas. Remove comma separating the reporting verb from the actual words spoken. Study the kind of utterance reported and introduced an appropriate reporting verb. If necessary, example, replace tell or say with ordered for, command, pleaded for, request, etc. Study the context to change the personal pronouns I to he, she, we to they. The change depends on who is reporting to whom. For example, Rita, I hate to see you in saris to Anuj. Anuj reporting to Rani. Rita said that she hates to see me in saris. Rani reporting to Subhash. Rita said that she hates to see Anuj in saris. Or Rita said that she hates to see her in saris. Make changes in words expressing nearness and time. For example, this becomes that, here becomes there, tomorrow becomes the next day, yesterday the previous day or the day before. Use that to introduce statement in reported speech. That, however, can be dropped. Some of the sentences spoken by Dr. Benson and Evans, direct speech, are given in column A. Column B has those sentences in reported or indirect speech, as the speaker or listener would report to someone else afterwards. Match column A and column B. So we have in column A, this is Dr. Benson. He said, Are you going far? Asked the doctor. I'm going all the way to Detroit, said the man. Could you give me a cigarette? Evans said. Do you mind, mister, if I take another cigarette for later? Put that watch into my pocket, he said angrily. Evans asked for a cigarette. He ordered Evans to put the watch into his pocket. He introduced himself as Dr. Benson. Evans wondered whether he could take another cigarette for later. The doctor inquired whether he was going far. The man declared that he was going all the way to Detroit. So let's start. This is Dr. Benson, he said. So that will be, yes, that will be C. This is Dr. Benson, he said. He introduced as Dr. Benson. Are you going far? Asked the doctor. The doctor inquired whether he was going far. Then, I am going all the way to Detroit, said the man. The man declared that he was going all the way to Detroit. Could you give me a cigarette? Evans said. Evans asked for a cigarette. Do you mind, mister, if I take another cigarette for later? Evans wondered whether he could take another cigarette for later. Put that watch into my pocket, he said angrily. So that goes over here. He ordered Evans to put that watch into his pocket. So these lines over here seem confusing, so I will remark them over here by putting the appropriate answer. So So study the matched pairs of sentences. Do they carry same or similar meaning? Yes. Are both the direct and reported speech sentences spoken at the same time or moment? No. We cannot use the reported speech until after the words have been directly spoken. Therefore, we change the verb in direct speech into its corresponding past tense form. We also change the reporting verb Tell or say according to the kind of speech. Act reported. Study the sentence in column B in 1 about the list the reporting verb introduced. Example, complete the sentence by selecting the appropriate verb from the box below. You will have to put it into past tense form wherever necessary. Admit, agree, announce, argue, claim, complain, confess, declare, exclaim, inform, mention, promise, remember, suggest, regret, and tell. The criminal said, I have committed the murder. So over here, for the first one, it will be admitted. Asha, oh, I have failed in maths. Asha dashed that she failed in maths. Asha regretted. Ravi's father said, I think you could seek your uncle's advice. Ravi's father dashed that he could seek his uncle's advice. Over here comes suggested. My brother said to me, I'll give you a watch if you stand first in class. My brother dashed he would give me watch if I stood first in my class. My brother promised. Manik told Shruti last month I attended the science conference in Hyderabad. Manik dashed Shruti that he attended the science conference in Hyderabad last month. Manik informed. So now we come on to change the interrogatives. Change said to ask or inquire. For WH questions, do not use that. Begin directly with the same WH question word. For yes no questions, indirect speech is introduced by if or whether. The question form is changed into the statement form. For example, direct speech. Rani to Ravi, how did you travel to Pune? Indirect speech. Neha to her friend. Ravi asked Rani how she traveled to Pune. Direct speech. Ravi to Rani, do you have a rose garden? Indirect speech. Rani to her friend. Ravi asked whether I have a rose garden. Negatives and verbal short forms. Shan't, can't, isn't appear in full in written reported speech. Exercise 4. Change the following questions into indirect speech. He said to me, are you going home? He asked me whether I was going home. He said, did you see my brother yesterday? He asked whether I or he saw his brother the previous day. He asked me, which bus stops here? He asked me which bus stopped there. My friend said, what is your brother doing these days? My friend asked what my brother was doing these days. My brother said, "Does Ram know my address?" My brother asked whether Ram knew his address. So now we match the questions in direct speech with the reported speech in column B. What is your name? So that would be, he asked me, what is my name? So I see. Where do you live? He asked where I lived. Could you tell me your date of birth? He wondered if I could tell him my date of birth. How long will you stay here? He asked how long I would stay here. Did you have a comfortable journey? He asked whether I had a comfortable journey. Study the sentences in 5a to say whether the following statements are true or false. The word order in reporting question is the same as in the statement. It is true. In reporting a WH question, the connecting word that is used, that is false. Whether or if used in reporting yes no questions, that is again true. Now we come on to worksheet. Listen to the conversation on giving and taking direction, then fill in the blanks below. Speaker 1 asks Speaker 2 for the directions to the dash. Speaker 2 first asked Speaker 1 to go dash. Secondly, Speaker 1 was asked to take the dash. At the T crossing, Speaker 1 was asked to turn dash. The rest house was on the dash side of the road. So this is for you something to practice with. We'll come to let's write, that is reporting experience. What is an experience? All of us keep having some experience or the other every day. But how can one define an experience? We can perhaps say that an experience is an event that affects or influences one in some way. In this lesson, you are going to learn about reporting or describing experiences. The language that you will need to use for describing experience will be in the following areas. Expressing the past. Reporting complete actions, describing complete actions, describing thought and feelings, using first I in reporting personal experience and in active voice. Sequencing the past. Using all forms of past tense, using linking as sequencing device. Read this paragraph where R.K. Narayan, a very famous Indian writer of Malgudi days fame, describes his experience as a small child of watching a lamplighter lighting up the street lights. The paragraph describes a scene in Madras, now Chennai, in the early 20th century. It was exciting one day to be asked to go with my uncle to the street of shops. I clung to his arm and marched along. It was the evening hour. I noticed a man with his hand and shoulder stuck through a bamboo ladder, going from post to post, lighting the street lamps. The lamp posts were few and far between hexagonal glass shades on the top cast of iron pillars. The lamplighter was an old man wearing a khadi coat and a blue turban, equipped with a ladder, a box of matches, rags, and a can of oils. He moved from pillar to pillar unhurryingly. I was fascinated. I had never thought there could be so much to do to light up the dark nights. Clinging to my uncle's fingers, I watched him. He went up his ladder, opened a little ventilator, took out the lamp, cleaned and wiped it with the rag, filled it with oil, lit up the wick and closed the shutter, climbed down, thrust his shoulder through the ladder again and passed on to the next one. I had numerous questions welling up within me, all sorts of things. I wished to know about the man, his name, where he came from, if he slept wearing the ladder, where what he ate, and so forth. But before I could phrase them properly, I had to be moving along with my questions unuttered. Now let's analyze this passage. The writer uses past tense throughout. There is a description of the street lamp, the lamp lighter, how he lighted the lamps. The writer expresses his thoughts and feelings about the experience. The expression, it was exciting, I was fascinated, conveyed his feelings. A lot of thought in the form of question came to his mind on watching the lamp lighter light the lamp. There is a feeling of disappointment expressed when he says, I had to be moving along with my question unuttered. Recollect the definition of experience and read this paragraph. The day I stood and became a man, I reached the door of my home, sweating not from exhaustion but from fear. I opened the door. A calm feeling came over me as I sat down. One more day I had escaped it, but no more would I run or hide. I would stand and be a man and fight. The next day, as I walked to school, out from behind a tree, the bully came. We stood face to face. Fear ran through my body. Then he swung and I swung. As blood ran from his nose, my fear turned to courage. But then something happened. The fight stopped. We stood like that for a minute. No words were said, and then he smiled, I smiled. The paragraph begins with a sense of fear, and then a decision is taken, and finally there's a sense of satisfaction and happiness. These kind of experience became an unforgettable part of one's life. Exercise. Describe in about 100 words a pleasant childhood experience. You can attempt writing on any one or all three ideas given here. Some idea. The day I was declared the best student of my class, the most exciting family gathering in my grandmother's village, on my 14th birthday. Remember to write in the past tense, sequence the happening, write about your thought and feeling during the experience. This is a passage which describes the landing of Armstrong and Aldrin on the moon. This is written in present tense and the third person. Read the whole passage once, then rewrite the entire passage in past tense and first person. Imagine you are Neil Armstrong. It is Sunday, 20 July 1969. The American astronaut Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin in the Eagle landing craft are slowly dropping down towards the surface of the moon. They glide over the rocks and crater until they see a clear and level space suitable for landing. Down, down, until the feet of the eagle gently touch and settle on the moon's surface. Through the cracking radio comes Armstrong's voice. Descent engine stopped. Override switch off. The eagle has landed. Very smooth touchdown. We are in middle of a wide, oval, plain, about 8 miles by 3 miles with some hills on the horizon. Large number of craters, about 50 to 5 to 50 feet across. Every variety of rocks here. Not much color, mostly grey. It's beautiful. Later, the two astronauts climb out and walk on the surface of the moon. They kick up a fine powdery dust like charcoal that sticks to their boots and clothes. They plant a flag, but without air to make it breathe, it hangs limply. There is no sign of water or any form of life. The sun glares out of a black, cloudless sky. Far away, the earth shines blue and white. During a long moon day, the temperature rises to 118 Celsius, 180 degrees Celsius, but falls to nearly minus 113 Celsius at night. In their clumsy spacesuits, the astronauts find movement difficult, but the low gravity helps them to bounce and hop about like kangaroos. They scoop up specimens of rocks and dusty moon soil from the surface to bring back to Earth, besides sending back picture by television. They take color photographs and sign film. Soon it is time for them to return to their spacecraft to prepare for the long journey back to Earth. And behind them, in the dust, they leave their footprints, a reminder of how men first walked upon the moon. So please do remember to do these exercises as they will help you a lot. So thank you for watching this video. Please do like, share, subscribe. You can join our WhatsApp and Telegram channels using the link in the description box. You can contact us on the above mentioned contact numbers in the description box. Thank you and have a good time learning with e-education. Let's crack NIOS. Let's see you in the next chapter.